My name is Gregory Davis, my school is Box Hill School, and the school code is 3660. My session number is 8. This is my English A1 standard level individual oral commentary for examination in May 2011. This is the start of my commentary. The poem I have chosen is the Human Abstrace, which is linked with the divine. The Human Abstrace offers its audience with an in-depth analysis of God's four virtues of pity, mercy, peace, and love. This we can link with the divine, how God has created man. Within the Human Abstrace, the narrator Blake speaks of the existence of poverty and its fueling of pity, how one could not exist without the other, how mercy would not be necessary in the face of this. He states how the source of peace and fear gives rise to what Blake names as so-called selfish lovers. He attacks the church and state for not dealing with the problems of society. It's not putting a right to this flaw in society. Even speaking of this suppressed society, how suppressed society finds itself trapped within the mind-forged manacles. He describes how cruelty plants and waters trees, this personifying people of his time, how there grows one in the human brain, this being the four virtues, the root of the tree being humility, the leaves being mercy, and the fruit of this tree being the deceit in Blake's society. Blake shows us an insight into how he feels about his society, how the vicious circle not only exists in the repetition within generations, but also within the oppression of lower classes, and indeed the class system itself, how on each different level that exists in society, in his case, was forced upon the general population, and in the mind-forged manacles which come from within. He asserts the traditional values of the church, the virtues of mercy and piety actually being the driving force, as they presuppose that there will always be a world of poverty. This being Blake's view, but still can be reflected in the society of today, as we now live in a so-called politically correct world, yet still a world of suppression. This can be reflected towards our society today. This led me to think that are we much more advanced than in Blake's time, that we now don't so much see the world of poverty, but it still exists to some extent more than in Blake's time, much like it did in Blake's time, and the circle is ever more present than before. Blake's world of suppression was enforced by the teachings of the church, which acts as a kind of passive and reassigned sympathy that registers no obligation to alleviate the suffering of others to create a more just world. Blake, I do not believe, takes them as ideals, but reasoning that in an ideal world of universal happiness and genuine love, there would be no need for them. The poem begins criticizing so-called touchstone virtues that are so praised within the divine image, which calls them the four virtues of delight. How man prays to these in their hours of need. How man prays to these in their hours of need, because they represent God, our Father dear, and also how they are the characteristics of man. How mercy is found within the human heart, pity in the face, peace is a garment that envelopes man, and that love exists also within the human form. Therefore, all praises to God are directed not only to God, but to man himself, the human form divine, which all must then love and respect one another. But going back to the human abstract, how these same values of pity, peace, mercy, and love all lead us to the same outcome, in the divine, to be the selfish lovers within the poem, showing us the clear difference between love and innocent abstract. The poem moves on to explore the growth, both insidious and organic, the wrongs of the system of values in Blake's time, which are based on man's exploitation, man's fears, and man's repression. The second half of the poem shows the tree, the intellectualized values that of pity, mercy, peace, and love, and their being the breeding grounds for the oppressive system that Blake is seeing in his society. Blake personifies cruelty as being a person, or persons, how their mind-forged manacles exist with the planting of a tree, or should I say a seed, by the higher levels of society, the upper classes, which keep the lower classes trapped, keeping the circle in existence. He depicts how this tree flourishes on people's fear, showing how humility is the root of all this, mystery is the foliage, but how its growth is a non-natural process, and how it does not reflect upon the natural state of man, and its real association is man's deceit by his fellows and society. Blake goes on to say that the raven is upon the tree's branches, representing the guard and eventual death and exploitation. Within our own mind and society, the personification Blake is trying to gain is depicted in this area. He comments on how the poem shows the way that the abstract reasoning undermines a more natural system of values. This results in Blake's purpose, his grotesque semblance of the organic, a tree that grows nowhere in nature, but there lies one in the human brain. The end.